Hello everyone and welcome back to City Skylines 2, where we are of course building Easthaven County. Now for those of you that are new, Easthaven County is a sort of realistic North American inspired series based somewhere along the southeastern shorelines of the US state of Massachusetts. And in the most recent episode of Easthaven County, we focused on some major infrastructure revamps, as previously this highway or interstate that cuts through the entire county cut straight through this city of Chowder Bay as well, turning into a 4-lane avenue for a stretch here. Instead, with the input of you guys, we actually created a bypass highway instead, so that the highway runs pretty uninterrupted across this central island here. We also did a bit of expansion to Chowder Bay's Northport industrial area, adding in a small coal power plant, and we also wrapped up by adding the Chowder Bay High School so that we provide a higher means of education beyond the level of the elementary schools. And I'm pretty excited for this episode, as we'll be taking a pretty giant leap forward by actually starting the second city of the map, as we'll move across this bay here and establish an entirely new city over here, which we'll of course make sure is well connected to Chowder Bay. And before we continue, here's a friendly reminder to consider liking this video if you enjoy my content. It's a small thing, but it would actually really do me a big favor. Quick thing we gotta do before we jump into starting the all new city. We've gotta rename the highway here. I asked you guys for some input, and as always you guys were fantastic. But also quick to point out that it's probably too small a configuration to be an actual US interstate, and it's probably a state route or like a state highway instead. So I got a few of Joe's suggestions as well, and this one in particular from Katie Frisk makes a ton of sense, as the State Route 28 goes really close to where I'm imagining Easthaven County to be. So we're gonna rename the entire highway system here to State Route 28. Alright, let's get to it. I'm thinking the first thing we're gonna do is, of course, buy some tiles so we have a bit of room to work with. But then we're also gonna need to create a couple of connections for vehicles. And I'm thinking we've got a bit of a hill here, one of the, probably the tallest hill on this island here. And we should be able to cross this strait with a bridge as well. I guess if we just speed up the time, we can kind of pause and let this ship be like a guidance line for just how tall the bridge is gonna be. So that's one connection we're gonna make, and then if we can afford all the tiles, or if we want to invest in all the tiles, we should probably connect up to Massachusetts Route 28 as well, so that we can cross this strait with a like an offshoot of the state highway. But let's grab the tiles for starters. The ones we'll be needing, we'll probably grab these 6 here. That's a good start. And then I'm thinking we're gonna do a bit of terraforming so that we've got the same elevation for the bridge on either side of the strait here. So if we just right click around here and then click, and I'm just gonna make a little plateau over here, and I'll do the same thing over here. Something like this. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the 2-lane highway Truss Arch Bridge. Yeah, I'm sure the pronunciation was butchered there, but oh well. And then we're gonna bring it across. Like so, and as expected, it did elevate the central part here to ensure for proper access for the ships. You can always redo these 2 end segments here, but for now I think that's fine. Next step is gonna be figuring out where this actually connects to Chowder Bay, and probably through some new off ramps to Route 28 as well. So we're gonna have to create a route through this hill here, and I'm thinking that we could go south and cross around here. So let's see, if we go and grab our slope terrain tool, I'm going to right click up here. Wait, I'm not. I'm actually just gonna go with the level terrain tool, and then we're just gonna kind of create a small passage here. And then we're gonna right click up here, and I think we'll go down from here and see how that actually turns out. We're getting some pretty steep cliffs here, but I'm hoping it's gonna look okay. You can always do a little terraforming. So we'll curve our highway or route down the slopes here. And then we'll need a connection here. Let's have a look at how this looks. And a bit of a curve here, and I think that looks pretty alright actually. I think that's a good start. Next part is gonna be the connection over here, and we'll probably have the downtown of this new city here in this bay here. I think that's a really good location, and then we'll have to decide on maybe trying to make this look like a beach or something instead of using keys maybe. Could be a fun way to go, but we'll need to do some pretty serious terraforming here first, because there's a pretty steep drop off in height here. So let's see if we just right click up here, then hopefully we can, let's see, where are we gonna drag from? All the way back here maybe? And then try and drag a bit of a curve here. Okay, I'm just gonna try this out, guys, and then we'll see if we need to do a little adjustment, because I don't want it to look too artificial. I think it looks all right. And of course we'll need to... Do I have contour lines on? I do. Great. So I think this is a pretty good start, just to get the main route in first. Let's connect up our new highway to Route 28 in both directions, or at least we're gonna have a direct connection from when you actually enter the main island here with Chowder Bay, and if you wish to go over here in this direction, we'll have a direct connection to that. So we'll just prepare. Yeah, we'll probably just do this upgrade. Seems like I need to disable snapping to get it completely smooth, something like this. And then we'll of course need once again to ensure that there's a bit of a smooth transition here in the terrain. And then maybe let's see if it makes sense to get a bit of an on-ramp as well. So I'll just create a new node here, then we'll upgrade a small segment here as such, and then we'll branch off our ramp from about here. And I'm gonna be cheeky and see if we can just do the direct connection like this and how that's gonna look. And it looks pretty good. Cool. Let's jump into creating an off-ramp from Massachusetts Route 28 right onto this new highway for easy access. So we'll of course go ahead and create an upgrade here first. Align this manually to prepare for this off-ramp. Then we'll need like an extra road here, because I also want you to be able to of course go from this direction and then onto the highway, which you can't use this slip lane for. So we're gonna branch out here. Something like this I think is probably fine. I'm just gonna smoothen the landscape here as much as possible. And then we'll create the first access to actually get on to Route 28. We'll just get ourselves another node created here, upgrade this to a 2-laner. And then we can of course redo this connection here as such, and then we'll go and grab the off-ramp here. Just need a bit of elevation, and then I'm hopeful that we can make it very, very smooth. Something like this. We'll see if we got any clipping, and that doesn't seem to be the case. We'll just go ahead and upgrade this to a key, so that looks a bit better. And maybe finally we can upgrade this segment here to allow for 2 lanes. If we do this and then upgrade this segment here as well, then we'll jump into our road services and we'll disallow left turns here because we of course don't want that, and we'll disallow a right turn here. And I'm gonna upgrade this to a key as well to just provide sort of like a safety barrier, or you know, it kind of looks like a guardrail actually, which is pretty cool. So with this in place, let's connect up the other end of the expressway here to Route 28 somewhere here on the mainland. And the cool thing with Anarchy is that if we enable it, we don't actually have to buy the tiles to create, you know, infrastructure developments. So we can kind of save those. And I guess when you have the Anarchy mod, it doesn't really matter, you know, how you spend your tiles. But yeah, I guess it's good to know at least. So we'll have to create a bridge here, and I guess the train bridge is placed a bit weirdly, at least like from a cost perspective, because it hasn't been built at the, you know, these hills, which would at least reduce the amount of elevated segments you'd need. So let's just, I'm just gonna grab the bridge, which I'm not gonna try and pronounce. Oh, we'll grab this one, sorry, the highway bridge, and then we're gonna find a good spot up here. Something like this. Then we're gonna find a good corresponding spot over here, which hopefully doesn't have too much of an elevation drop. We'll just see how, if we can really minimize it. I want it just to be as little as possible. So if we go for something like this, then that's looking pretty sweet. Then we'll change to our 2-lane highway. And we'll just drop the elevation over here because that's obviously not needed. And let's enable contour lines. So we've got a bit of a ridge here. I guess this is fine, but we'll have to enable our curve tool so we can kind of follow the contour lines. And I guess if we can just get like a smooth curve all the way down here, then that is probably gonna look, yeah, looks pretty good. And then a bit of an elevation here before you actually enter the bridge, which I think is fine. Now over here we've got some contour lines as well. We've got a bit of a ridge here that's covered a bit up by forest, so we're gonna have to kind of snake our way up this ridge, which should make for a bit of a more interesting design. So maybe let's see if we can like go for something like this. How does that actually look? Looks pretty good. We can add a retaining wall to this side here, and like a key segment to the other side. Make it a little more interesting. There you go. And then it's just a matter, of course, of getting it connected to the main Route 28. And we're gonna think a little creatively here, because we've got the train line, or this train line at least, going real close to the highway. So we're gonna need a special type of interchange here. So I think what we're gonna try and do is go underneath the highway here, Route 28. So if we go down by about 7.5, then that should be sufficient. And we'll go out here. We can upgrade this to a bridge segment in just a moment, but I'm probably gonna do a little terraforming so we don't have this, so we don't have such drastic retaining walls. But let's see, we'll of course have to do a little upgrading so that we've got some on and off ramps. But yeah, I'm adding these nodes so that there's just about even distance between these ends here for the slip lanes, and this should be fine for starters. And then of course it's just a matter of bringing this down here. There you go, and we can upgrade this accordingly, of course. And let's see if we can connect this up so that it kind of looks the same. I'm gonna stretch this a bit more because the elevation changes are a bit more drastic on this side. Cool, there are some final touches to fix this up, but I'm gonna do that in just a moment. For now, I'm just focusing on kind of getting this in place really. And I think over here we'll just get the same type of connection, but at a higher point. And then let's see if we upgrade the Route 28 segments to to bridges, and we drop in a few small roundabouts and remove some power lines. That wasn't my intention, but remove a few trees as well, and maybe even add like some. Is that gonna do anything for us? No, but we can add like some guardrails as well. Gonna add that over here as well. Basically just turning the pieces into keys, of course, add these guardrail structures, which looks very, very cool and very fitting as well for a highway. And I think that's a sufficient connection for now. It's a bit of a weird one, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. Just need it to be connected and look sort of okay from afar, which I think it does. And I'm thinking we're gonna name this highway as soon as we've got the name for the new city here, because then we could call it, you know, the name of the city and expressway or bypass or something like that, just to add a bit more character to it. So with that said, let's jump straight into actually start developing the city. And I think we're gonna start a bit backwards by creating a good job center at first, because we've got pretty high demand for industrial and commercial, and just a bit of, or not a bit, we've got a pretty substantial medium density demand, but we're gonna need a bit of extra residential demands to really start developing the downtown, which I think is gonna be placed around here. So we're gonna start with an industrial base, a harbor basically, or a port. There's gonna be a ton of ports throughout Easthaven County as the backbone of the economy, so this is just gonna be another one. So I've bought an additional tile here to develop on, and then we're gonna create a port that kind of stretches alongside the coastline here, hopefully resulting in some pretty interesting shapes. And the first thing we're gonna do is some substantial terraforming, of course. So let's just check the level of the port over here. I think that's pretty fitting. So we're just gonna right click over here to grab that level, and yeah, it's gonna be perfect. Then we're gonna increase our brush size and start kind of just painting where we might want the port to actually extend to. And you might as well just really grab as much land as possible, because you can of course narrow it down when you've got your actual road layout in place. And one of the reasons I want a lot of space here as well is that of course I want some nice train stuff to be incorporated as well. We're gonna have some freight rail down here, some fictional one, at least for now. But if you have this issue with elevated roads after terraforming, just hit play. The game just needs to kind of settle. The simulation needs to settle a bit, and then we can pause. And then I think the first thing I'm gonna do is just bring down the rail somewhere down here, because then we can always try to branch out from that basically. And we've got some pretty steep contour lines here. So I am thinking, let's see how there's a bit of an elevation difference here between the road and the rail. So I'd probably like for the rail to cross on top of the road basically, or cross above it. So let's see if we can just grab a segment here, and oh, I don't have curve mode enabled, that's why it's acting a bit odd. We'll grab this node here and see if we can branch out and go across the road. So I'll just elevate it a bit, but basically just something like this, and then I'm gonna bring the road underneath it instead. Yeah, it's gonna act a bit weird. I'm gonna delete the road so that we can get it to not act as weird, and then bring the road underneath. And we might even bring it down a bit. Something like this should be sufficient. We are gonna upgrade it to a bridge, of course. Let's see, a bridge segment like this so that the road can actually go underneath. Cool, then we'll just smoothen this out ever so slightly. And hopefully that looks nice. It does. And then it's just a matter of bringing our freight rail down into the port. And we're gonna do a bit of terraforming as well here. A lot of terraforming even. Let's see, we'll adjust to this height and then see if we can like just create this hill. And then we'll see if we can actually adhere to our goal of realism, which is to not exceed a drop of more than 4%. And it seems like we're gonna be able to achieve that, which is very nice. 3.2, that's very manageable. And then of course we'll have to curve around the cliffside here, and then I'm just gonna bring it out here. And then we've got, you know, we've got freight rail access now, which is the big hurdle of trying to bring it down here in a realistic fashion. So with this in place, we can start mapping out the road layout. Yeah, like to get this sorted first, because it's always a bit of a pain to retrofit a freight rail line after you've mapped out your entire road layout, especially if you need to do a bit of terraforming as well. So let's see, to make this port a little less generic, I'd like to buy some sort of unlockable structure that's gonna be like the focal point. Maybe the recycling center. It's relatively cheap. I don't think I've placed it in game before, and it's actually a pretty big asset, so that's very cool. So I think for starters, I'm actually just gonna try and align the recycling center perfectly to our rail here. But it's gonna stick out just a bit, so I think I'm just gonna make a little adjustment to our rail before we continue. Just gonna make it hug these hills a little closer. Something like this, and then of course I'll just add this end here so it doesn't complain. And then we're gonna grab our bad boy here, and I want to place this first because you can easily snap roads to assets in City Skylines 2, which is a feature I really like. So if we are to place this first, like so, then we can just move in here, grab our small alley, and with snapping enabled, you can see we can easily actually just snap to the asset. So that's very, very nice. And then we're gonna create the road layout we expect to have for this port area here. Cool, let's just try this out. We'll grab our key tool, start turning the side of these roads into keys so that we can easily terraform in just a second and have our port take shape. This is like a brick water of some sort. And I'm kind of splitting the port in two because I think I'm just gonna add some trees and stuff here maybe so that it isn't industrialized, but we'll see. I'm not gonna end up with as much zoning space for industry as I had actually hoped. But I don't want the port to be, you know, too bulky either. I was really imagining like a very slim coastline of industry on maybe like reclaimed land, and I didn't want to dig into these natural features either. So we'll see how it ends up looking. I think this is a pretty good start, especially if we can snake in a few more of these fictive freight lines here. That's really gonna spice it up. This does look a bit odd. Let's try and do a bit of terraforming and see what we'll actually end up with. And I'm gonna start the simulation and run it at full speed, because otherwise, if we just terraform the whole thing while the game is paused and then start the simulation, then the water physics is gonna cause a tsunami or something. And yeah, when you flood areas in City Skylines 2, it seems to take forever for the water levels to actually settle, so that's a bit of a pain. So I'm hopeful that by doing it in a slow and steady manner while actually having the simulation run, then we'll be able to avoid that. This is a weird looking board. I'll go ahead and upgrade a few of the roads here to some bigger ones, and I think it's fine. We just extend a bit out into the water here. We'll upgrade this one as well, and these ones, and I'll just align this manually as such. And then we're gonna have to create like a highway connection up to the highway here as well. So let's see if we enable contour lines. We've got a bit of a hill going, of course. So if we can kind of follow this hill, kind of like the train tracks are doing, and then just break in here, then I think that's just fine. And then we'll cross the tracks and connect. And this looks fine. Then we can actually start zoning some industrial stuff out here. Not gonna spend a ton of time detailing or anything like that, just gonna zone this all up, and then we'll see if adding like a bit of surface painting might just spice the area up a bit. Just gonna make sure I don't cut too much into the surrounding hills, as we discussed. Something like this, and yeah, we don't even want, I want a bit of industry. Actually, I think we're gonna have industry here, but then we're gonna preemptively turn this into a key, because then we can move in here and do some terraforming just to make sure that the factories spawning here aren't gonna look completely out of place. It's gonna look pretty cool actually, hopefully at least. And a bit of terraforming here as well. And we're just gonna connect this minor road here as well to the main highway cutting through. And just gonna do a straight connection like this. Go ahead and upgrade a segment, allowing for some easier access to and from. Probably gonna do that as well over here. So since we've got some basic zoning in place here at the new port, let's switch our attention to mapping out a basic road layout for where we're gonna have the downtown. Now there's quite a bit of hills here, so would be pretty cool if we maybe have some row house districts or something stretch up here alongside the highway. But for starters, we're just gonna go for a pretty simple setup. I'm gonna have a main road go very close to the coast here. Let's enable some curve tools and some, let's see. It's not that hilly actually. The contour lines make it look a little worse than it actually is. So I think we'll go straight, and then we can try and like follow the contour lines we've got here. And I'm wondering if this intersection is probably gonna be a little too extreme. So something like this for now is probably fine. We can even have, let's see, we can probably even have a bit of a road cut off here, which is going to allow for a bit more industrial zoning in here as well. I want to follow this contour line here and then just go straight, because this seems pretty flat. Should be sufficient for a factory or two. And then there's a very, very steep incline here, so we're just gonna, let's see if we can make sure we don't go too high. See how this looks. Looks pretty good. We might actually add in like a retaining wall here, and even make the other side a key, so that it's a little more clear that it's not a mountain road, but it is kind of hilly, this area. We've got a bit more here that we can zone then. Big factory-ish here as well as here, and maybe something here. And of course we're gonna have to connect our main road here up here somewhere. So let's see, I did do some pretty crazy terraforming to get this in place, so I'm gonna try and do the same, and we'll just reduce the size of this. Then we'll right click up here, guess that's the level we want to get to, and then I'll try to make the road snake up as such. And then we can of course do a little terraforming of the surrounding areas as well. If this roads, or if this the terraforming we've done here sticks out like a sore thumb. But we might actually just be able to, yeah. Just smoothing out a bit is gonna make it look more natural, I guess. That's the word I'm looking for. And let's see. A few upgrades here as well. At least when you come off the bridge. And I'm gonna do a little terraforming here as well. Otherwise this whole segment looks a bit odd. Let's check over here. It's the same here. But a little smoothing. Fix that right up. Actually, let's try and revise this to something that's just a little more interesting. I think it would be pretty cool if we had this road here cut underneath, and then we'll create a separate access. It's gonna look a little more interesting, I think. So we're gonna, let's see, we'll start by downgrading this once more to a 2-laner as such. Then we are going to grab our road services and we'll upgrade this to an elevated segment. We'll make sure this isn't, so we can easily connect. Then we'll go and grab our level terrain tool and we'll find a level that we'd like here to go underneath this road. It doesn't have to be all that tall. Let's see, something like this is probably gonna be sufficient. And then we're gonna once again use our slope terrain tool to right click here and then just drag from over here, so that we don't go as high. Right click and then I'll drag from over here as well, so that the road can continue its path. Then we'll right click up here and we'll drag from down here. Let's see, it's trial and error, right? So we'll go for a pretty simple path underneath here. Just gonna stretch that out. And how does that? Yeah, that's actually not tall enough. We're gonna need to lower it just a bit. So I'll right click here instead, and that did make a good difference. Right click here, right click again to bring this at level, and then we can drag it out anew. And that is definitely better. All right, and then our connection here. And let's see, we'll just have a pretty normal piece for starters, but it would be pretty interesting with some on and off ramps, just to add that extra complexity. That's always fun to work with. So I'm going to add a few nodes. I'm gonna add a node in here as well. Then we'll upgrade this to a 4-laner. We'll upgrade this to a an on-ramp. We'll upgrade this, and then we'll remove these small stops here. And then let's see, we're gonna connect this with a ramp to this one. So we'll right click up here and just smoothly drag that up. We'll right click down here and do the very same here. And hopefully we can just be able to get a really nice smooth looking transition in both directions. And I think if we add like a key to this side, then that looks pretty cool. I'd even add one here. And then up here we can do the same upgrade show where we essentially add an on-ramp, and here there's a bit of an off-ramp. Alright, let's just have a look. I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead with our road services, of course, just to enforce some better traffic rules. Maybe we don't want... Oh, I can't... yeah, I can't actually control each of these, so I'll have to allow for 2 right turns, I guess. And here we are not gonna allow for a right turn, and we won't do that here either. I think that looks a little more interesting than the configuration we had before. So right before we dive into the road layout of the city, I'm gonna add a few roads over here as well, because we've got some freight rail. And I think just getting a bunch of workplaces down, or at least getting the road layout in place to start building some extra workplaces is going to do us very well. It's going to be a good investment up front. So I'm just going to add these very simple roads to allow for some industrial or commercial zoning next to the freight rail here. Something like this I think is fine. Maybe we'll have a branch off down here. And sometimes when you're working on building like an entirely new city, then just getting roads down on their own will help make things look a little more complete. Even though they, even if you don't zone them, then if you just add like a basic row of trees to it, then that actually does have an effect on its own. So that's pretty much just what I'm trying to do here. Just trying to get a road layout in place that is going to look like an actual city. Alright, so for the layout, we're gonna go sort of gritty, but not quite. I am gonna try and break it up a bit. So sort of gritty so that we get some appropriate zoning to actually work with in this game. But gonna try and break it off a bit as much as possible at times, just to make sure that the overall road layout is a little more interesting than it otherwise would be if we just went for a full grid. And we've of course got some contours here to adhere to, so I'm gonna try and smoothen that out just a little bit, make it a little easier to work with. But we're starting with some basic, I guess you could call them primary roads. We'll make sure to enable contour lines. Good to add in some of these small alleys as well. They really do help make the downtown feel a little older, a little more historic, especially if we have these odd-shaped roads cut in between. Trying to find a good compromise between a road layout that is interesting enough for you to actually enjoy it and not find it boring, but at the same time, also making it functional, basically. Of course, with the Anarchy mod, we can place trees wherever we want, and we can use the developer mode to fill in with some surfaces. So we do have a bit more flexibility when it comes to these weird shaped lots, but I don't want to go too heavy into detail, and I've also got this feeling that you don't really like that either. It kind of easily ends up taking time away from just expanding and just building cities, and I fully understand, and I agree even. So I'm gonna try and refrain from that at least. And as I say that, I've pretty much just made a cookie cutter grid here, so apologies in advance. I did mean for it to actually be like a bit more interesting than this, but yeah. Let's see if we zoom out. It's all right. It's all right. There's stuff here we can work with, and we've got some off angles that aren't quite 90 degrees. So it's not. Whoops. It's not too shabby. I guess I'd say. Let's see. We'll just add in a bit more as well. And then I guess as we move up this hill, we'll have some residential stuff. Some houses overlooking. There's a pretty decent view from up here, but of course you are actually nearing the industrial harbor, so it's not a perfect location, but I think it's a good spot for some low density residential at least. But I think before we start mapping out some lower density areas, I'm gonna start zoning in some commercial jobs primarily, and a bit of industry over here as well. And then we're gonna let that grow to kind of create a stronger job base in the region. Jobs is like the primary demand currently, so if we can really start satisfying that before we jump into the residential zoning, then hopefully that's gonna make it a little more enjoyable for us to do detailed zoning in the downtown, because things are gonna start growing as soon as we start zoning, and that's gonna give a quicker idea of how we want things to look. So with that said, let's get a bit of low density commercial zoning in here. We've got this road that branches off from the national route, or whatever we are going to call this here. So I think I'm going to concentrate most of the commercial zoning alongside the waterfront, and then alongside this road here, so that we've got kind of a reverse T from our point of view at least. And I'm gonna try and keep the zoning smaller in here, because I do want it to be more of an older downtown. So I don't want huge zoned lots and not a lot of surface parking either, due to the location. As we move closer to the highway here, we can have some larger lots, something like this, for instance, to have like a grocery store or something a little bigger, hardware store maybe. But in here, closer to the central core, we're gonna have some smaller zones. And we might as well get in some mixed housing already, because that is going to be a theme down here as well. And I'm gonna be cheeky and try to implement a bit of European mixed housing as well. We're gonna see just how it looks, but it's just to kind of get that extra diversity in the type of buildings we'll see growing here. While we are letting the first few things grow, we might as well just get in the first small parks as well. It's of course going to help with the land value of this area as well. A small playground. Just kind of preemptively increase the land value before we start moving in people. And we can probably start adding in our row houses now, and I'm gonna use some European style as well, because I know they are going to look a little older and hopefully not look too out of place in our city. So I'm gonna try and mix that up, make sure we get a bit of both, and we'll even do a bit of actual medium density, maybe alongside the waterfront, as that is like where we'll see the highest density developments. But otherwise, lots of row housing here, just like is the case over at Chowder Bay, and it just looks great in the in game. The row houses here are fantastic assets. And I think an additional critique I have of the game, or at least the way you unlock, is that if we look into our milestones, then we're gonna have to get to Great Town before high density businesses are actually unlocked, which is kind of a shame, because you know, the only way to commercial this zone currently is low density, and it is really low density. All the buildings are pretty much just 1 story tall, and you'll get gas stations and stuff. And since there isn't there isn't a ton of variety in the mixed use housing, and you don't really have like row house level density with shops at the very bottom, then I do kind of feel that I'm missing something, because like I said, the mixed use, it just, not a ton of variety. I have to use European to mix that in as well, so that's a bit of a bummer. But I think it's time I keep quiet for a sec or two and continue on with the zoning here. You'll see me likely adding a few extra roads if necessary as we move along, but I'm just gonna take it slow and really try and think about how I zone up this new city. Okay, so I initially just wanted to zone up some stuff for the time-lapse, but I think one thing just led to another because I was having a ton of fun. So I'm just gonna do a little recap of what we've actually built here, because we've pretty much got a city now. Not a finished city, but a good starting point nonetheless. Starting with downtown, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I didn't really do anything special here other than trying to mix different types of zoning as much as possible. Adding in a few mixed density stuff, lots of row housing of course, and then some medium density. And I think overall the look really turned out quite well. As I discussed, I wanted to try and create like a row house district that kind of nested its way alongside a hill. So we've got Barlow Springs. Yeah, I'm not sure about that name. If you've got suggestions, let me know. But we've got Barlow Springs, which is pretty high density, and it kind of nestles its way up this slope here. And I think to achieve this, I just went for pretty, zoning lots that aren't too deep. So they're like 2 or 3 tiles deep, and that really helps achieve the cozy look I want. Quite a nice view as well. We moved across the train tracks, and I created the most simple park in all of Cities Skylines 2, but I think from afar it does provide visually what I want. And then just some cookie cutter suburbs using lots of trees and trying to add a bit of different type of zoning to indicate that some of the areas are, built by a single developer, such as the more modern houses we've got out here on the outskirts. For the port, I went in and did just a bit of detailing using the surface tool I've got available, and of course developer mode, to create like a petroleum slash oil installation here, as well as adding a cargo ship. So pretty subtle on the detailing, and this area isn't done of course, but it's mainly just to add that job base, so that we can actually start zoning the city. And it's much the same out here, just added a bit of surface stuff, but didn't really do much detailing. So this place is really just to add in all the jobs. But yeah, the big thing is, of course, I need a suggestion for the name of, I guess of all the districts, but primarily just the city in its entirety, because then we can rename downtown to the name of the city. And of course, for context, we've got Chowder Bay over here, and we are in Easthaven County, Massachusetts. So if you've got a suggestion for the name of the city as well as a backstory, let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to scout out all your suggestions. And I think with that said, it's probably time to wrap this episode before it gets completely out of control. We've got a ton of stuff done for a single episode actually, so I'm pretty pleased with that, but really looking forward to all the suggestions and input you guys might have on where we are actually taking this yet unnamed city. But thank you so much for watching and sticking by through this episode. I'll make sure to shoot some nice cinematics, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you and goodbye.